It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at the new Beholder, number 27. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. Today, from 1981, we're taking a look at the Beholder, number 27. Hope you enjoy the video. We continue our look at this fanzine that's produced by Nichols Scales and Scales Designs, which is his company. This is the new Beholder, as he calls it. It's a magazine size. It's a little bit longer, like we sometimes see in the UK. And it's got this funky sort of tape-like binding down the side. It's really good. It holds together, imagining, these things are like 40 years old. And I have a couple different copies, and they're both, the binding on all of them is really, really good. This is from July of 1981, and this is the second of 4 that these folks will put out. Let's take a look at our cover. Very cool. If we zoom in here, this is Helmenhale, I think I'm saying that correctly. This is more of a science fiction themed one, I think. These look like space cats of some sort to me. It looks like you're looking down the barrel of some type of a laser gun or a cannon or something as this space cat decides to jump right at you. Very cool. Here's our contents. As you can see on the right, I'll get out of the way in a second. There's a lot of people involved. There's an editorial, The Assassin, which is fantasy fiction. Shop review. This is a new thing that Nick Scales does, where he takes a look at a particular gaming shop somewhere in the United Kingdom and highlights it. The Preacher's Pulpits, where you can write in and share your thoughts. Your Rights is the letters column. The Armorers Guilds, taking a look at the arms and armor of different real-life historical groups, mostly in Europe so far. Monster Summoning, New Monsters. Anthern, it is Traveler Information. Helmenhale, which is Graham Staplehurst City campaign he's trying to design. The Dome is a traveler adventure, no AD&D adventure this time. And the Electric Zygote, which is both the old school aerial servants version of Play by Mail, but also their reviews, new products, and stuff like that. Okay, I'll get out of the way and we can take a look at our contributors. Nichols Scales, of course, is in charge. Simon Kirby, his assistant editor, he came over with the group from Aerial Servant, as did Graham Askey, Stephen Cullis, Michael Dale, Matthew Hankins, Keir Watson. And then we get contributions. Helen Jago does artwork. Chris Hatt, Alan Johnson, Colin Johnson, Jay Nichols, Alex Self does the Fally comic. Michael Dale, John Crook, Dave Davies, and Graham Staplehurst all have some contribution here in the fanzine. In terms of the editorial, he mentions that unfortunately the Games Fair convention sponsored by TSR over there would have already occurred. Unfortunately, they didn't know about that in time to tell you in the prior issue. And then they also mentioned that they're letting Simon Kirby take a bigger role, as sometimes he says, Nichols, says, I won't be doing everything every time. They want you to know that they have decided their official name is the New Beholder, which you can abbreviate as TNB. And of course, TBH is how folks have been abbreviating the original Beholder one. He takes issue here with the comment from White Dwarf issue 24, which had recently come out, that said basically the hobby had moved on from the sort of the Ziploc packaging of things. And as you may know from watching other videos, Nichols Scales had recently released his adventure called The Standing Stones, which came in a Ziploc bag. And they apologize for the mistakes you might have found in the last issue. The Assassin is fantasy fiction. It's a pretty good story. This is the first part of it. And this lady, her husband, I think, has recently been killed, and now she starts off where she's at his side, his dead body's side. This priest comes up and says, hey, if you want to get the guy who did this, I know where he's going to be. She's a fighter. He pairs her up with this guy who I think is a monk. They don't say that directly, but it appears through the course of the story. The monk leads her to the tomb where this magical cloak is located. They know that the guy who killed her husband is going after this cloak, and so they expect to find him there, or if they can get it first, they think he'll come to them trying to get to the cloak. And so this one ends as they've discovered the tomb. gone inside, and just as they get to the room where the cloak is, then they hear the voice, which I'm assuming is going to be the assassin that they've been looking for. Here's our shop review. It's called Games Center. They're big fans of this. 2 stories. They say it has a fantastic selection. Their only complaint is the magazine section on the second floor is a little thin. Preacher's Pulpit, Matthew Hankins, who was one of the editors of the Ariel Servant, and he basically gives you an example of what he's going to encourage you to do, what he calls the living dungeon. And he gives this example of a party who's gone inside this small cavern with some orcs, and they've fought some of them and won, but unfortunately what happens is one gets away. He's then alerted the other orcs that live inside the cave system, and basically they end up confronted by some orcs. They try to run away, but a second group of orcs has circled around the cave entrance, and so they sort of get caught in between, and the entire party is killed. And his example is, orcs people treat like punching bags, and one orc certainly would be, even for a low-level party. However, this idea of the living dungeon that sort of he says a better word would be reactive, reacts to the presence and the behavior of the party in an intelligent way, based on the intelligence, as he says, of the monsters. So like here, the orcs initially were overconfident and thought they could take out the party with too few people coming to confront them, and the orcs end up getting killed. But eventually they bring like the entire, orc troop to bear, and they overwhelm the party with superior numbers. They've already used their spells and their healing, and the party's just, out of luck. And so that's his point, right, is that, the one orc escaped. That was a critical blunder by the party. He was able to alert the other 30, 40 orcs that lived in there, and then they were able to use overwhelming numbers and take the party out. And then he has another example here. He has this little tiny drawing. He says this is a sort of reclusive magic user's lair. You can see he would have like a magic mouth warning system. He might have a magical enchantment to lock the door from 1 to go out of room 1, or maybe from 4 to 5, if that's his lair. Has these secret passages he can use to spy on the party or get around. I think he says here his idea was there would be a rat that is the familiar of the magic user who will be in room 1, see what the party's doing, go through little tiny rat-sized tunnels, and be able to alert the magic user. There are other rooms here where the magic user might have other type of magical wards or protections or traps or different things like that. And his whole point is just someone who's intelligent like a magic user is going to have designed his lair to be protected from intrusion, because obviously he would guard his magical items and himself and his research, very jealously, and like here would have an escape route that he could probably use to get away if he thought he was overwhelmed. So again, good article, very thoughtful tip, very relevant to any DM today, just like it was then. You're right. This is the letters column. People like the new one. Some people complain a little bit about, like, the Beholder was awesome before. Why'd you change it? Some people complained about the fact that type size changes in different pages, which is how Nicholas Scales keeps the page number down, but packs more in there. Like the adventures are always sort of at a smaller font size, because that's the only way he feels like he can put an adventure in here, is if he uses less pages of the magazine. I call it the first letter here. You look, it's signed by Ian Marsh. He was had a heavy role in a fanzine called Dragon Lords. I have those. We haven't taken a look at them yet, but it's another contemporary and very sort of popular fanzine in the UK at the time. And they sort of tease Ian. They said his letter was so long he probably ran out of paper writing it to him, but they obviously edited down quite a bit. Other folks think they did a good job of not spending money on a glossy cover. They like the tear-out idea for the monster summoning. I personally don't like that. Fortunately, every copy I have has the monster summoning in there, which sort of tells me most people weren't tearing those out either. One person writes in and talks about why there should be maybe more stuff covering tabletop gaming, more like wargaming, and of course they say here, like, we're not mixing those two things together. We don't think a lot of role players at this time are wargamers, and a lot of wargamers aren't role players, so they should just basically end up with their own magazines. So that's their idea. There is a mention here of back issues. They obviously only have one here at Scales Designs, which is issue 26, and a few are available. But they keep in touch with Mike Stoner, and he mentions at this point, July 1981, there should be a lot of reprints of the original Beholder fanzine available for folks. And of course, they would reach out to Mike because they kept that separate. The next article, Michael Dale, the Armorers Guild. Again, this is looking at real-life arms and armor of different groups historically, basically in Europe. He looks at the Goths, the Anglo-Saxons, and the Norsemen. And he gives a few paragraphs of the first two and just a ton of information about the Norsemen. He's huge fans of them, I guess. Or maybe he just felt like he knew more, had more information to share. But in any event, he just talks about these different groups in time, sort of what kind of buildings they would build, ships if they use ships, arms and armor that they would use if for whatever reason, I don't know whether for wargaming or for in your campaign you wanted to have somebody who sort of followed one of those traditions. You could have a better, more realistic idea of what they used. I don't personally find these particularly helpful for a D&D campaign, but that's me. New monsters. These are kind of silly. The first one is the Dungeon Puppy, and doesn't look like a puppy at all. It is a extra planar, extra temporal, like from some other time or place, and it's a silver ball that bounces around with puppy-like enthusiasm in the dungeon. It is essentially immune to almost all attacks. It's immune to magic. They say the only way you can kill it is to reduce it to absolute 0 cold and shatter it. Let's see. Edged weapons do only 25% of normal damage, only 10% of normal damage done from heat or cold, 50% damage taken from blunt weapons. It'll have 10 hit dice, and basically immune to magic. And so basically it would get away from any attacks if it needed to. The Dungeon Puppy will befriend the highest charisma member of your party, and basically, for good or ill, follow you around like a little puppy forever. As they say, it's not all bad. This thing is basically immune to damage. It can set off traps for you. It can bounce around a corner for you. It can distract enemies who attack it and basically won't be able to kill it, and basically thereby helping you from not taking those attacks. So again, it is an interesting concept. It may need some tweaking, but I do kind of like this idea of this thing, and you're not sure you like it. It's not always helpful because it's not going to necessarily behave calmly like a puppy. It's overly enthusiastic, but it's a high level of invulnerability and thereby the ability to protect in particular that particular character from attacks or go set off traps or go around the corner first, whatever it might be. Could make it a really interesting addition to your campaign. So I think you should consider that as a DM. Here is the second monster. It is the Namura. No idea if this came from somewhere or not. It's about 3 feet tall. It can actually be 4 feet tall if it stands all the way up, but it tends to walk sort of in the bent over way. They're sort of nocturnal creatures. They burrow. They have a particular habit in their underground burrows that they'll have a large central chamber where they will keep shiny objects like coins and gems. And because people know this about these creatures, they tend to raid their burrows to try and steal their treasure. And the interesting thing about them is in the nighttime, they will tend to be more likely to sort of fight back and attack. They can surprise you in the night because they're sort of dark colored, so they're hard to see. And if they get together, there can be 20 to 50 of these appearing at a time. They sort of have this psychic level to join their essence or some either aura, some type of energy, and create a pool of hit points. There will be two hit points for every one of the Namora that are in the group. And every time you attack, the first 7 points of damage against a particular Namora is absorbed by this communal energy until it reaches 0. So, you could have 10 of them, let's say you'd have 20. And so the first couple of attacks, basically 7 points are absorbed. And you have to do obviously then more than 7 to do any damage to one of these actual creatures. And so, again, it can wear down, but it's going to protect them at first. And they say the sort of burrow will empty out. 10% of their number will arrive every round until 100% of them are present. And remember, that's adding to the pool of just protective energy that they have. So that's kind of interesting. I've never seen anything like that before, so I liked it. This is Anthern. It's just a traveler article. It's super short. It just gives some stats for their spaceships. And then we have Helmenhale. Graham Staplehurst is still looking for, and remember, this is a city supplement like the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. He stopped saying in this article that he was going to do it like that, but better. But anyway, he wants to create it. He's still looking for contributions and asks every reader to send him a temple, a shop, a building, an inn, a tavern, blacksmiths, markets, any idea you have, just one sort of building or place at a time, and he's going to cobble them all together, the good ones at least, and edit it into this big product, which I don't believe ever happens. He's been working on this for months now. The Dome is a traveler adventure. Essentially, there's a scientist who's been investigating something. He's gone missing, and you're going to go and try to find him, I guess. And then we have the Electric Zygote, which used to be just play-by-mail, but now it's sort of play-by-mail reviews, contact information for other players, etc. So they give information about the different postal games still, a traveler game, a couple of D&D games, a RuneQuest game that are being played, and then who's running them, how to get involved, etc. They mention a couple of other things. They mention FGU games that are being released: Aftermath, Into the Ruins, Magician's Belt, and a scenario for Space Opera, and Wild West. And then Scale Designs, I'll show you that here in a minute. His home company's going to have a couple of things. There's a review for a game called Combat 3000, Lord Valentine's Castle by Robert Silverberg story. And then I thought this was interesting, software review for the personal, they said, the personal computers you may have, like a TSR 80, an Apple, etc. And there's this guy named Scott Adams. It's called Scott Adams Adventures. And this guy has created 10 different programs that you could buy to play on your home computer that are sort of, I don't know, fantasy RPG, maybe sci-fi RPG inspired. And so you can get those, remember, back in the day, for those of my age, you remember back in the day, you'd get those on like a floppy disk. Okay, a couple of things I wanted to highlight. Just a couple of meetings you're probably familiar with: Dragon Meet, Games Day 81. This is the Scales Design stuff that is for sale. He now is selling some hex sheets and the Standing Stones, which is his fantasy adventure. And we do know that was produced. I think at least one guy who's a contact of mine on one of the Facebook groups who actually has that. So we know it got produced. And then this is the TSR stuff, which I thought was particularly interesting. The Phineas Treasury is now available. That's the Fiend Folio is coming out. He mentions X1 and C2, which are out, but he didn't get copies, so he wasn't able to do reviews. But this is what I want to call your attention to here at the top. These are the new adventures coming out, which didn't. L1, which becomes The Secret of Bone Hill. It's called The Rastenford Murders. I'm going to have to get somebody who knows a little more about this stuff to help me out with this. I don't know if that's just they changed the name or that's a completely different module that never existed. T2 certainly didn't, right? Remember, Gary Gygax had designed the Village of Hamlet, and then T2 was going to be the Temple of Elemental Evil. Various things were going on at TSR. He never actually does that module. It comes out years later. Frank Mincer sort of picks up Gary's pen, works with Gary, but Frank mostly does the work, as I understand it, to create, I think it's called T1 to T4, and it's the first sort of massive size one. Module, great module, but years later, and I think so many of us really wish we could see Gary's T2. And not that it existed, but it would have been nice, I think, if he had done that. In a lot of ways, I really wish there had been someone who was an excellent sort of business mind to help just run the company and let Gary create, because I thought that was the thing that he did so well. I liked all of his adventures that he put out. And then B3, Palace of the Silver Princess, there's a whole bunch to say about that, but I guess they call it the Princess here instead of Princess. Maybe it's just a typo. And they mention which Dragon magazines are available at the moment in the late 40s, early 50s, right? So anyway, that's kind of interesting. I like those time capsules. Here's our cartoon from Folly the Magic User. Stand back, I'm going to blast him with my Wand of Cold, and he puts an ice cube around the party, thinking to himself, funny, it never occurred to me you could hold a wand in the wrong direction. And then a second one where he says, oh, there's orcs coming after us. The Magic User again says, don't worry, they can't see us in the sunlight. And then they roll up on them, and they're all wearing sunglasses. And so now the party's in trouble. Just some other illustrations. Not all of these have any initials or anything in them. We've got this, I don't know what that vulture-looking creature or harpy is up there. We've got this guy with a bloody scythe, just looking all kinds of nasty. And then we've got this crazy-looking, I don't know what that creature is, but it's funky. And again, it's not like a monster that had stats. That's just a random illustration stuck in the middle of the magazine. There's one, obviously, that's connected to the sci-fi. And we got this crazy-looking guy, looks like he's from a Saturday morning cartoon. And this mean-looking dude as well. Cool stuff. the last couple there, they have the HJ for Helen Jago, so I know those have some credit, but the others, it's not clear to me who did the illustrations. For those who are interested in advertisements, they do have a couple in this magazine, Games of Liverpool and Asdevium Games in the front and back covers. Model Workshop now has one, and you can see the hand reaching down to take hold of the person, who's then in turn reaching down to take hold of somebody on the chessboard. I thought that was kind of clever. And then this guy at the back, Games Unlimited. The best thing since Sliced Fred. And of course the dead warrior has a shield that says Fred across it. That's it for the Beholder number 27. Got two more of these, 28 and 29, we'll take a look at in the coming weeks. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hope you're liking this series, and I hope you're subscribed. If you've got friends who might enjoy our content, please send them our way. Hopefully they will enjoy the old school rules goodness just like you guys are. Have a great Friday, have a great weekend, and until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.